Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another Collaborator conversation with 10th Wave. My name is Ashley, and I'm a violinist with 10th Wave, and my co-host today is Kelsey Farr, who is a violist and is playing two pieces on our winter virtual concert this time. So after almost a year now of having performances canceled or put onto the back burner, 10th Wave finally will be getting to put together a virtual program called Musical Emergence Voices Unheard, and that will be shown on February 20th. We are so excited to be performing together again and making music. You can check out our website and social media pages for some more event information, as well as links to view the concert. So today we are joined by Kyle Rivera, who wrote the string trio Merge that we are performing on our concert. And it's so awesome that we get to meet and chat with the composers behind the music that we see on the page. So thanks so much, Kyle, for joining us today. How's the start of 2021 been treating you?
It's pretty good. The year was off to a weird start, but definitely rolling in and things are looking up. I'm really enjoying it so far.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so glad to get
it's
to
our
talk
pleasure.
to you. Yes, totally.
You go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna say that we're here in Minnesota, and we had a rehearsal earlier today on our trio, and it was really fun. But we got home before the snowstorm started. But so where you are you in like southern U.S. or?
Yeah, I'm in Colorado. Yeah, just outside of Boulder. And we have snow coming later this weekend. So we're probably gonna get the back end of your storm.
Yeah, whenever weather comes from Colorado up here, it's usually like the worst weather we have. It's like, oh, something's coming from Colorado. Oh no.
Yeah. I guess we get it pretty good. We'll get some light snow, and then it'll be really sunny for a whole week, and then we hear about the rest of the country just like not having it.
Do you ski or snowboard or anything?
I've gone skiing my first time this past December. Had a lesson, and it was really great. I'm definitely looking forward to getting out again. I'm new to Colorado, so just kind of getting into all the winter activities and all the hiking and the beautiful scenery here. Really enjoying it.
Yeah. Oh. Have you gotten a chance to see Colorado Symphony yet?
No, there aren't really a lot of performances or anything music going on in Colorado right now. It's still kind of they're still playing it really safe.
Good.
Yeah. When did you move out to Colorado, or like where were you kind of before being there?
Yeah, I was in Houston, and I moved here at the very end of July, and started working in August. And I'd been in Houston for most of my life. I was born in Boston, and then moved to New Orleans, actually, where I grew up, and then relocated after Hurricane Katrina to Houston, and stayed in Houston for all the way through high school and college, and then just recently moved out here. And I'm hoping to work here and go to PT school in Colorado, hopefully to become PT for musicians one of these days.
That's awesome.
Yes, we need more of those.
Yeah, it's rare to find a physical therapist who like actually understands what we do in our daily classical music lives. So that'll be amazing.
Yeah. And yeah, an extra special perspective being a violist too. I don't have to tell you, it's a really awkward instrument to play, and we need every little crack and muscle, help.
Yeah. And like a PT session is like limited. You only have so much time, and you can't spend the time being like, okay, this is what it feels like to play the viola, and I have to move like this, and I have to do this. And like, just have somebody who gets it right away and be like, okay, understand the viola. I know what you're going through. Here's exactly what you kind of need to do.
Yeah, maybe I'll consult you at some point.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, well, so viola is your primary instrument, and we knew this because we actually watched one of your interviews that you did, I think, with a project with the Houston Symphony, and you played a little bit too. But we were like, oh, that's awesome!
Played some Bach, yeah, so Bach sounded nice. Yeah, from a dorky viola perspective, I was wondering who made your viola, and honestly, this is gonna sound weird, but like, how big is it? Because it looked kind of big.
Yeah. It's a 16 and 7/8 snow model, and it's a pretty new viola. It was made in the around like 2008, I think. And so I've actually had that viola since high school, and had no interest in switching it up. It fits pretty well on me. Like you can see, I have pretty long arms.
I noticed.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't been playing as much lately since the pandemic started. But I've still been teaching, and I'm really enjoying still having some of my students back from Houston, and helping them get set up too.
Great.
Great. Has your teaching moved to all online then, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All online. And even in the Colorado area, any students here are mostly online.
Oh, okay.
Do you teach composition lessons too, or primarily just viola or violin, or?
Yeah, I just teach viola and violin lessons. I haven't done composition lessons, but I do give theory lessons and give theory tutoring.
Very cool.
Okay, yeah.
How did composition kind of become something that was a part of your musicianship?
Yeah, so I started composing because our high school was relatively new, and so we didn't have a lot of instruments and equipment available. And then we got a pedal harp on loan from another high school, and so like seeing that instrument up, it was my first time seeing a pedal harp, and so I actually sat down, started strumming on the harp, figuring out how it worked, and I started writing for harp. And then my orchestra director, we were playing a piece, and he asked if I could arrange a harp part for it. And so I did, and that actually kind of kicked me off on exploring the harp and then exploring other instruments. And I started just writing more and more. And then I had a friend who was applying as a composition major, and he's like, dude, if you love writing, you should try to be a comp major. And then I was like, yeah, I'll do it. And then I got to meeting some composers at the University of Houston. Mark Buller was the primary one, and he started looking at a little bit of my work and giving me some helpful tips. And then I met Dr. Rob Smith, and just like meeting him, he was just incredibly passionate about music, and he kind of opened up my world to a different type of it's a different perspective on like harmony and expressiveness in music, and how to really kind of translate art and ideas into sound. And just I had so much admiration and so much inspiration for him that I was like, yeah, I definitely want to study with you, and I would love to get the chance to audition and pursue this more in whatever capacity I can. And so that really kicked things off, and then I got to where I am today.
So those are kind of like, yeah, your teacher, kind of like your living influences. Do you have any other like composer influences that you just like love, either like Beethoven or somebody living who's more modern, and somebody that you look up to? Or who are your primary kind of, I don't want to say mentors, but inspirations?
Yeah. So I love the music of Brahms and Sibelius. I would say that that sound world is the type of music that speaks to me the most. And I could like listen to, a Sibelius symphony on repeat for hours and hours and days on end. And I definitely take a lot of inspiration in my view on textures and kind of a soundscape from Brahms and Sibelius. Their use of counterpoint, and the way that they kind of spread timbres across whatever ensemble that they're using. I love Haydn too. I wouldn't say I take a compositional influence from him, but I love playing Haydn. Like I love Haydn quartets. Like more than anything in the world is my favorite thing to play are Haydn quartets. And modern composers, I would definitely say Stephen Mackey is a big one. Missy Mazzoli, I've been getting really inspired by a lot of her music. George Vidman, Joseph Swantner, and Luciano Berio is a bit more on the contemporary side, who I really enjoy. One time, me and my friend were driving from Austin back to Houston, and we listened to all the Berio sequenzas just just straight through. And it was like the best night. I was like, man, this is the coolest music I've ever listened to. And it's yeah, those are probably the main influences that I have, as well as like just pop influences that don't necessarily appear in my music, but kind of just influence my musical language. People like Michael Jackson, Tupac, J. Cole. I listen to a lot of Ariana Grande and Lady Gaga. I'd say Ariana Grande is my top artist on Spotify.
Nice. I was gonna ask about Spotify actually. Yeah, Ariana, nice.
Yeah, I can. She's one. I can't go more than a couple of days without listening to Ariana Grande.
Her voice is so unique and beautiful. I love Ariana too.
It's so soulful and expressive, and just it's so dynamic, and I just it just speaks to my soul.
Yeah, totally. So how would you describe kind of your process for writing? Do you have like a work day where you sit down at a desk and kind of write some stuff, or is it when you're walking down the street, a certain melody or motive comes to you out of the blue, or some of both, or what's kind of your process?
It sometimes depends on what the circumstances of the actual like commission are, or the topic of the music. I'd say that in general, I draw a lot in my manuscripts. And so I'll draw shapes and I'll draw different figurations that will somehow translate in my brain from those shapes and doodles and stuff into music and gestures. Like for Merge, I could actually show you if you have like a moment. I can just go grab it and show you some of those doodles.
Love to see it. Yeah.
Well, maybe while
awesome.
Kyle is doing that, I'm going to pull up a photo of the art sculpture that also was involved in the compositional process for Merge. And it was a piece by Nathalie Miebach.
Yeah, and I think having both visuals are really important, because she did send me her artwork, and she had like a concept map that she worked off of. And then with that, so I actually have like these types of shapes. They're just like really like kind of weird, abstract like shapes. And then you can see it gradually progresses on my notes from those shapes into actual music.
Oh, wow.
Very cool.
And so that's kind of like you'll see that in like all my pieces, and then you'll see here the shapes have now like developed into actual gestures, which then transitions into the actual like music itself.
You can really tell that in your music, the final product. Actually, it's very gestural. Yeah, that actually gives me so much insight into Merge. And honestly, some of the other music I've heard of yours, but that's really cool. And even your doodles, I don't want to call them doodles, your very awesome art. There's some merging and intertwining, even of different colors. There was some red and some blue kind of intermingling in there. And that's exactly what your music sounds like too, which is so cool.
Yeah, and I can't fully I'm glad I was able to show it to you, because I can't fully put it into words how that translates. But I think seeing it actually helps kind of get an understanding of my process. And since you know a little bit about the project, I guess I could just jump straight in. So Nathalie, what she does with her weather score project is she goes and she takes weather data from various storms, particularly hurricanes, and then she'll translate that data into these really intricate 3D art installations. And it's really cool the way she does it. She sent me all the data, and she has like sheets and sheets of like flood gauges and like maps of road closures, and she translates it into this. It's kind of similar where she has like a concept map. The one that she sent me was one of Houston, and it had Beltway 8 and 610 in the middle, and she had the road closures and these different shapes that were signaling like kind of the way that the road was closed, or the amount of water that was accumulating in certain spots. And then she translates that into this magnificent, like really intricate 3D art installation. And what she asks is that I take the data and a little bit of the visual art and actually translate that into music, but use more of my human perspective. Because in the case of Merge, she was using Hurricane Harvey, which was, we all know it. It was super catastrophic. Over 1 trillion gallons of water dumped on the city of Houston, and I was there, and so she wanted my perspective of that human side of it. And so what I took was her idea of drop, where water droplets accumulate into this massive, catastrophic accumulation of water. And I took that from a human perspective. And so each individual has an experience. And in the city of Houston, we take these individual experiences, make them interpersonal, and we get to a more local level and a globalized level where all these human experiences are interacting and kind of building on top of each other. And that's where this idea of merge comes together. So we have all these experiences merging into one holistic experience for the city of Houston. And so I kind of took my story, where I start off as like an individual, and then it's kind of a weird story where me and my roommate were kind of locked in the storm, and we weren't fully prepared to be locked inside for 2 weeks. And so we ran out of food, and then he's like, well, I'm going to see if the store is open. And so he drives out because like the rain was kind of letting up. So he's like, maybe it's safe to go check if Kroger's open or something. And while he's driving out, he ends up crashing into water, and it starts raining again, and the flood water starts picking back up. And he calls me, and he's like, dude, I'm like trapped. I need to get the car out. I'm like, I'll come right there. I run out into the storm to where he is. And then like, we're trying to get the car like into a safer spot, but like the water is like rising at an insane rate. And like, by the time I get there, it's like up to my knees already. And so we're like in his car, and then we start like calling people. He calls his girlfriend. I call one of our neighbors, and like all of our friends are like posting on Twitter, like trying to get the National Guard like in contact and like trying to like get to us, but like everybody's like flooded, so the National Guard can't reach everybody. And so like we're like having this like insane experience where we're like freaking out, and all of our friends are now freaking out, and it went just from like me at home to my roommate, and then my neighbors, and then his girlfriend, and it's just like expanding into this insane experience where everybody's freaking out, but it's really centered around us. And then this experience kind of expands more and more. We ended up being fine. The rain let up, and we were able to just get back home. We left this car, was completely totaled, but we were fine. And then later I went out, and once like the storm had passed, I went out into the neighborhood, and I was volunteering with a local church, and we were going from neighborhood to neighborhood, trying to help people get resettled because everyone's houses were destroyed. People, like, their furniture was taken out of their house by the floodwater and moved like 3 blocks away. So we were trying to help people just get to a place where they could clean up and rebuild. And then I remember a scene of like on a road, everybody had their furniture out on like the lawns because it was all soaked. And literally there were hundreds of people just along the street, and we were all just like experiencing this together. And it kept growing and growing, where people were then volunteering and donating. And it really became it was like less of individuals experiencing the storm and more of a community experiencing the storm. And that's kind of like my story and like the narrative behind how I translated the art into this human experience. And then kind of how I created Merge, if that makes sense. I just kind of rambled, but
no, that got my heart rate up just thinking about that.
It makes more and more sense too, just thinking about kind of what we've been playing and what we've been studying. And so our friend Patty, who is our cellist in our ensemble, she unfortunately wasn't able to be here today with our chat, but she plays with the Kinetic Ensemble in Houston. She went to Rice, and I think stayed there for a while, but or beyond her when she graduated. But in 2013, over the summer, she actually moved to Minnesota, and so she was telling us that all of this stuff was happening with the hurricane and all of her friends, and she felt kind of just like really powerless and helpless, like living so far away, but knowing that like her home was just going through this case. And so it's kind of nice, I think, for her to revisit this in a way where now she can sort of step back or just have a different perspective on it. But
yeah, definitely. And that's a strong connection. I know a lot of people who were abroad were just like really trying to get back in touch with everybody in Houston at that time, because it was so unexpected and so like insane. Like this is the only way I can explain it.
So how does I'm going to change the subject a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How does your viola playing and the fact that you play viola affect how you compose? Or do you like composing for strings or viola in particular over other instruments? Or do you compose stuff? Do you kind of fiddle around on the viola to kind of figure some stuff out? Or
yeah, and I'm a pretty crappy pianist, so I instead of sitting at the piano to play stuff, I do actually play a lot of stuff on my viola to help me kind of audiate when I'm writing. And I think that as a violist, I think every violist has a unique perspective about ensemble playing and about just sound in general, because sound is such an important part to viola playing and kind of searching for sound. And so I think I'm very sensitive to timbres. And I mean, you guys know in the music, there's a lot of timbral specificity, like the sol ponticello, the sol tasto, and like the harmonics, the way that they blend in with certain notes. So I think I bring that into my ear just from playing viola and ensemble playing. I'm always thinking about how parts are linking. And so that's probably why the rhythms, as you guys are experiencing, are really tightly wound together. You're always like playing off of somebody else, and you're always responding to another instrument. And I think that's part of what I bring as a violist. But definitely my favorite instruments to write for are percussion and saxophone. I think rhythm is a really strong tool of expression. And because that's kind of what percussion is all about, is rhythm and timbre, I think that really speaks to me. And whenever I get a chance to write for percussion, I really do go ham. I love exploring the different ways that rhythm can provide direction or expressiveness to the music. And it can even be really lyrical percussion writing if you get like some really good composers who know how to hear and write for percussion. I really love listening to that.
so even just hearing you talk about your attention to rhythm and sonorities and stuff like that, I could easily connect the dots between you and your piece Merge. So would you say that Merge is pretty indicative of, say you were going to show somebody who had never heard of you before one piece just to represent yourself, would you say Merge fits in this category of something that really represents Kyle Rivera as a composer?
Yeah, I do. Not just because of the technical aspects of Merge. Like it really does capture a lot of the things that I value in music and in composition and in making music an effective tool for capturing the human spirit. But I feel like more than any other piece, it captures an experience that's me. Because it really is based around my experiences with the hurricane and how my experiences kind of connect to everyone else's. And so, yeah, I would say that this is a pretty representative piece of my style, my sound world, and kind of who I am as a composer.
Well, we've really been enjoying kind of diving into it and learning more and more about it the more we look at it. One of the things, I can't speak for everyone, one of the things I appreciate about new music in particular is how I don't want to say easy, how accessible it is to fit together. Like you were saying, it's a lot of like reacting and observing and kind of how it fits together. So we don't have to sit there only with a metronome, just kind of making sure we stay together all the time. We can really explore and kind of, oh, well, this is how this interacts with this and this, it's easy to put together. So I thank you for that, but it also has a lot to offer in terms of musicality and letting each individual voice speak for itself. So yeah, it's been really fun, I think, for us.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm glad that you guys are enjoying it and that it's that's something that speaks to you. Because I feel like that's always something that is easy to overlook as a composer, is how is this going to be interpreted by a performer, and how is this going to feel to be a performer in this, music. And so I'm glad to hear that it's speaking to you in a way that is not turning you off to the music.
No,
not at all.
Because let's see. Actually, one thing I was going to ask about about your piece and just its connection with Houston and with Kinetic was, or their ensemble there. How did the commission come up? Was it from the Kinetic group, or was the sculpture and Nathalie Miebach's pieces, art pieces, like kind of part of the whole inception of it, or?
Yeah, so it was. I think it started with Nathalie, and her first step was actually looking for composers, and then she had reached out to Dr. Smith, my professor, and from there she was actually able to get connected with me, and then she got connected with the Kinetic Ensemble as well. She was connected with Kinetic through the Houston Center for Contemporary Craft, which is where she was going to host her exhibit. She was going to be their artist in residence, and HCCC had they'd collaborated several times with Kinetic before, and so like, oh yeah, we know this great group, Kinetic would be excellent for it. And so it was kind of just like she just went to Houston and she's like, I just need people, and she just through word of mouth got connected through me and as well as Kinetic, and I think it worked out really wonderfully.
Well, and it looked like the musicians during the concert were just playing in the room with all of the pieces. That's really cool too, just to get that effect and the colors and all of the shapes kind of being physically around you. I can imagine that would have been a really fun experience, both to watch and to be performing in as well.
Yeah, it was really interesting, really incredible. One piece, each piece had like a slightly different setup, and on one piece they were in all different parts of the gallery, and they actually moved. They had like a choreography where they were moving to different parts of the gallery during the work.
Wow,
that's super cool.
Oh, that's really fun. Yeah, the mixing of these different art mediums, is that something that you do a lot with composition? Have you been asked to kind of write based on a different piece of art before?
Yeah, and I think that's one of my favorite things to do, because I think it's really valuable to live performance, like being able to preserve that. It's really valuable because then it kind of forces people to actually come and experience the art in person. Like not everybody has that same value in just hearing live music. Since we have things like Spotify and we can listen to recordings, some people really need that extra incentive to go out and experience the art, and having that multimedia collaboration is really a powerful way to not just bring people to live performances, but also get people connected in art in a new way that they never thought of, because then they're opening their minds to not just hearing the music, but thinking about how it connects to the other form of art as well as the human experience. And I think it's really a great way to engage people and draw different types of audiences.
Yeah, well said. Definitely. Yeah. Do you come from a musical family? Are your parents musicians, or?
My mom played the piano, but she's not a musician.
Sure.
Yeah, there's no one else in my family that I know of who's like a professional musician of any sort. I'm kind of the only one.
Me too.
But
yeah, me too. Ashley too. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No, I guess so. Yeah, it just came from nowhere, I guess. So what can we expect to hear from you next? Are you working on any new projects, or?
Yes, I've got a few collaborations coming up. I'm going to be doing a community outreach with the Philadelphia Music Alliance. We'll be talking to some of the students in the community, primarily less people who have access to less, and I think primarily minority communities as well. And then we'll be featured on the Chelsea Music Festival as one of their featured artists. And then I just have like a personal thing that I'm working on. Since the pandemic started, I haven't really written music, partly just because I just needed to step away and kind of needed to just kind of reset and relook at the world the way it is. And I finally kind of started getting more inspiration and doing more of my little drawings. And what I'm working on is an idea called pivot, which the word pivot means to modify something while maintaining continuity with its previous form. And it's kind of this idea how as things change, there are certain things that don't seem to want to change or can't change. And in light of a lot of the events that we've seen in the news and kind of racial inequality and COVID, we're seeing that as there are more things happening and changing in our world, there's still these underlying factors and these underlying situations that are kind of still persisting and still pervading in our society. And it's kind of taking a look at that and what exactly that continuum means to our new and changing world. It's just there's nothing like there's like a performance data or anything on that. It's just like something that I'm exploring and working on my own. Just kind of.
Well, it's so relevant to the current times, just like you're saying. I mean, it's natural to want to step away for a little bit, kind of re-examine, and then come back with a fresh perspective. And that's I'm excited to hear more.
Yeah. And see what happens with that. Yeah.
With life in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to get too ethereal, but
as 2021 rolls along, we'll see.
I know. I suppose going back to when like this pandemic and kind of going into lockdown and everything started, what was it like for you like last year around maybe this time or maybe a month or so later when news first hit? Were you in Colorado or were you still moving?
I was still in Houston. And I already had made the plans to move to Colorado, which was obviously just made more difficult by the pandemic. But you know, kind of once it kicked off, I think obviously none of us really knew what was going to happen, like how long the whole quarantine thing was going to last, and what exactly was going to be the state with COVID. So I kind of just tried to be as easy with myself as possible, and as like things went on, as like I stopped practicing and I just didn't have anything to write or wasn't inspired to write. I tried to forgive myself for not living the way that I feel like I should have. And I was seeing a lot of my friends who were composing a lot. My friend did a thing called the quarantine miniatures, where he was writing like a piece every week, and I was seeing that, and I was like, should I be writing? Like, should I not? Like, all this stuff is like unprecedented, and I don't know how to take it, and like it's still hard to process like what exactly happened. But I think trying to be forgiving with myself made it easier to adjust and like open my eyes to things and just kind of take in the world and try to find a new perspective. And especially once I know this wasn't part of the question, but once George Floyd happened, that's when it was really a time to like step back and be like, okay, what exactly am I doing? And like, what is going to be my role in this? Because things are changing, and with everything that happened after George Floyd, as an African American, it wasn't a surprise to me that it happened, which is the worst part. But as I started to see the reactions to it, especially from music ensembles and organizations and music schools, it really started to make me mad. And some of my anger and rage that started to build up was because of ensembles who were just like, well, because of George Floyd, we're going to perform more music by African Americans, and we're going to have more William Grant Still and Duke Ellington and Samuel Coolidge Taylor and them. And I was like, okay, but what are you going to do? Like, like this is obviously a time that you're going to put yourself out there and say that you're taking a stand for racial equality, but that's all you're going to do. You know, what are you going to do to address the systemic, you know, failures that your organization has now basically come out to admit? And I was seeing that a lot, and I think I needed to kind of step back. You know, my emotions have cooled, but my opinions haven't changed about the approaches and the need for change. And I don't want it to. The issue that I have with, like, you know, them just performing more music by African Americans is it's that band-aid that is misleading, in the same way that, you know, Barack Obama's presidency was, to say, you know, we have our first Black president, that means that Black people have made it. No, that's not what that means. To say that there are good composers or good music by, you know, African American composers is misleading. It's misleading to the state of affairs. It's misleading to the representation. So what are you going to do to change that? And how are you going to address it in a way that's meaningful and long lasting? And it's not just going to be over once the audience applauds. And so for me, trying to find some sense of empowerment and some sense of, you know, direction and purpose, I try to approach my philosophy for music on trying to empower myself by not letting myself be taken advantage of in that way, where I'm not just another African American composer on another program featuring an African American composer. I'm actually somebody who's making an effort to progress the system beyond what it currently is, and towards what it's capable of. Again, I just start ranting, but you know, those are my thoughts from.
We wanted to.
No, it's great to hear you talk about these things. I know it's maybe not the most comfortable or pleasant thing to always be talking about, but it is something that's just it's on our radar. It's on everybody's radar. And we at 10th Wave, we're also trying to make sure, like, okay, well, we don't want to just be another group that's like, let's just go research, you know, Black and brown composers and like hope we find some good stuff. It's like, no, we want to make sure that like our choices, you know, the music that we perform, it matters so much. And the way that we choose to even title our programs or who we put into our programs, it makes a lot more of a difference than you would think, just, you know, off the top of your head, because everyone's like, oh, I'm just going to go see some music. But a lot of our choices have come from what we've seen and what's kind of been, like, I guess, a standard. But going forward, I hope that a lot of places are going to think more critically about their decisions and who they program and how they're presenting it too. I think
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. And there's no, you know, right or wrong answer to how to approach it, but you know, just it's about not letting it stop at one benchmark and not saying, well, we've done this, you know, and we'll keep doing this. It's about trying to find ways to advance it and keep it moving forward, because that's really what is needed, is something that'll be progressive and long lasting.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really important.
mm-hmm. Well, one other thing I guess I wanted to ask you a little bit more about was your kind of other um profession of going into physical therapy, or kinesiology, is that what you had said?
Yeah, so that was the other degree that I got, along with composition and performance. Is I did study kinesiology, and that started primarily because of struggles that I was having on the viola, like, you know, things that every viola struggles with, like tension, posture, and, you know, just a way to approach the instrument comfortably and safely. And I've seen, you know, several of my friends who basically can't play anymore because of things like tendonitis or playing related injuries. Even my teacher, who is very body conscious, and she does like yoga, she works out a lot, and she's always stretching and trying to, you know, find the most relaxed approach. You know, she is still suffering with playing related injuries, and, you know, procedures on her, she got procedures on her back. She has issues with numbness through her fingers. Just like, and you know, everybody has something different. And as I started to, you know, go through my education, I was told at various points that, you know, I couldn't exercise in the way that I wanted to. I couldn't like lift weights and do strength training. And it didn't really make sense to me at first. And then as I started to get more into my studies on the kinesiology end, I started to realize safe ways to, you know, exercise the way that I want and have an expressive body in the way that I wanted to, if that makes sense. And then as I started to know, like learn different types of stretching, corrective exercise, and mobility work, which is, I think, was the most important thing, I realized that there was a way to exercise and train in the gym with my weights or within any, you know, field of exercise that would actually strengthen my playing. And it made me more relaxed while I played. It made me more expressive with my body. And it really did help me get from, you know, a point where I thought, you know, I would have to just give up either playing the viola or playing weights, where I could balance both of them. And I was able to play pain-free. I could pick up my instrument and feel comfortable, you know? And I think being able to feel safe and comfortable under your instrument is a huge accomplishment for any string player. And so I started to explore more of the PT world and realized that being a physical therapist is the best way that I can help other musicians get to that point. And so one of my goals is to have both an individualized approach as well as a more systemic approach to musicians' health and injury prevention. And it could be anything from being able to, as a physical therapist, do instrument adjustments, kind of an ergonomics check, where, you know, you would go into a clinic with your violin or your viola and you would play for, you know, a trained therapist who knows what to look for and can say, this is why you're having pain, you know, and maybe this is what you can modify, and these are ways that you can practice, or these are, you know, exercises or stretches you can do before you practice that are specified for you and your body mechanics, your shape, and kind of your conditions. And then more on the systemic approach is being able to, like, for organizations or music schools or symphonies, being able to have clinical equipment on hand, you know, things like traction for like cervical traction devices, foam rollers so people can stretch, resistance bands so that people can, you know, learn to engage the right muscles so that they can have strong posture while they're playing for, you know, 3-4 hour rehearsals. Little things like that can make a huge difference in the health and the wellness of musicians and players everywhere, you know?
That is like, I'm imagining, well, we both play in the South Dakota Symphony Orchestra as well, and other orchestras in the Midwest, but something like that just at the workplace would be incredible.
It's music to our ears.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, everything you mentioned, just body awareness and physicality, it's something that every human, but especially musicians, should be taught about their own bodies. And it's just not, unless you go into physical therapy as a profession. So I wish more people just knew about it.
Yeah. And I work at a physical therapy clinic now, and one of the therapists, she says that physical therapy is not just about like healing someone's body, it's about educating them in a way where they can prevent future injuries. And if they are having any sort of pain, that they have a knowledge base that they can use to address any future problems that they have. Like, I know a lot of teachers who will recommend like a chiropractor for their students. And the difference between a chiropractor and a physical therapist is you have to keep going back to the chiropractor. But with a physical therapist, once you're done with physical therapy, you're done and you're set to, you know, keep living your life and preventing future injuries. So I think teaching injury prevention in a way that's accessible for younger students will help them so that they're not just going once they're injured, they're preventing the injuries entirely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need a person like you at every conservatory across the nation, pretty much.
Yeah. And
it's shocking that we don't, to be honest. But
it really is. Like musicians are basically athletes with the amount that they have to use their body and the fact that they are using muscles and movement to generate their music. We are essentially athletes, but if you go to any athletic department, they have trainers, they have therapists, they have people who are medically trained to treat them, but we as musicians do not. And so that's one of our shortcomings and our failings in the music world, is that we don't put more emphasis on medical professionals who are experts in musicians and performing musicians.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, such an important role.
It really is.
Thanks for taking over. Huh. Wow.
Great.
Yeah, well, thanks for hearing my thoughts and more of my ramblings.
No, that's why you're here.
No, yeah, it's so great to get to talk with you a little bit more, and to even be able to like introduce you to our audience, to other composers in Minnesota. There's a lot of local composers who are just like really excited that we've got a new music group, and it's starting to gain a little bit of momentum here, which is kind of amazing that during a pandemic we were able to get grant funding to put on concerts. So
yeah. When you guys approached me, I was like, wow, that's so awesome that they are getting the opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. And I mean, it was sort of like a project we wanted to do over the summer, but the grant wasn't going to happen until closer to like the fall or even winter time. And so like, man, we were just like planning forever for this thing, but we were just really excited that we're going to be able to play music and getting to rehearse together again after maybe a year or so of not playing. It's great. And we're so thrilled to have music like yours on our program, and to hear a little bit more about it and understand it even better is like such a privilege for us. Not many people get to do that. And so it's very special.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Thank you so much. Congrats on the grant and being able to get, back out there. That's really awesome to hear.
Thanks so much. And thanks so much for taking time out of your weekend, Saturday evening to speak with us. I know it's kind of an awkward time, but we so appreciate it. And hopefully the weather stays nice down in Houston.
Or wait, he's in Colorado.
Or he's in Colorado. God. I knew that. Well, actually, yeah. How's the weather been in Colorado? Pretty cold?
Oh, this past week has been amazing. Like, I mean, not to brag on you guys, but but yeah, I mean, it has been pretty great here.
Yeah. Good.
I am jealous.
I know. Right.
I would definitely love to retire to Colorado. That's kind
of. I'm sending you guys good vibes.
As the snow is pouring down outside.
I know. Yeah.